Calm Before the Storm by Cara. Prologue. 15 years ago. The spy reviewed the night's handiwork with no small amount of satisfaction. The scene was one of carnage, fragments of a once harmonious existence, the wreckage of a once perfect life, now nothing more than broken shards strewn like forgotten detritus. A family massacred, a bloody chaos, mother, father, one child. But the task was not yet complete. One other still eluded them, the one, the special one, the other child. How the spy hated those of her kind. She had to be here somewhere. Send in the bloodhounds. The order given, the spy watched their right-hand man curve his thin lips into a grin, the yellow glow in his eyes a sign he would take great delight in the execution of the task. The spy cautioned him before he moved. They can cause as much damage as they wish, but make sure they only take what's ours, nothing else. Commands issued outside, the spy walked across the room, relishing the gratifying crunch of broken glass beneath booted feet. Surveying the destruction, the spy smiled at the culmination of years of planning. Whoever said revenge was sweet, no doubt some puny human was right, but they were also wrong. It wasn't just sweet, it was delicious. More booted feet echoed in the distance as the rabble of urchin boys, the bloodhounds they used to seek and retrieve, converged on the silent house in search of the elusive quarry. A horde of locusts, a plague, but a useful one nonetheless. The spy waited patiently while the vermin set about their task. "Look for the girl!" Shouts from the upper floors as the search intensified. Their prey was either adept at concealment or not present. Doors slamming, more shouting, "She's not in here!" The spy's elation began to dissolve as the search proved fruitless. "Where is that damn child?" Mild annoyance exploded into rage as realization dawned that the one they were searching for had escaped them. Again. This would not go down well with their superiors. Sirens in the distance. Too late. The human authorities had finally deigned to respond. Time for the hordes to depart. The spy barked orders, counting the vermin bloodhounds as they left. The last of the rabble, a dark-haired, black-eyed boy, descended barefoot from the attic, empty-handed. The spy vented frustration with a blow to the boy's head, sending him reeling, before turning and vanishing into the night. A fraction longer, had they waited, the prey would have been theirs. A fraction longer, had they waited, they would have heard the sound the first police to arrive would never forget, the piercing, agonizing sound of a child's screams. Chapter 1. Tir Balor. The name echoed wildly in Irina Columba's head as she clasped the manila file being pushed across the table toward her. A sharp spike of adrenaline shot through her veins. How could this be happening? It was as if there was some weird cosmic conspiracy against her. But why now, after all these years? Heart-pounding, brows drawn in confusion, she peered across the desk at her boss, wondering if she'd heard him correctly. The fighter? She paused, staring at him incredulously. You want me to question him? Merrick Spenson's steely gaze drilled back at her, a strange intensity in his sharp grey eyes that seemed odd for her usually calm, implacable superior. That was the idea, he replied smoothly. He won't talk to anyone, has clammed up tight since his arrest. Merrick paused thoughtfully, his eyes narrowing. You have a special gift, Irina. There are not many clients who don't open up to you, and I'm hoping that where others have failed, you'll succeed. Irina thought about her gift. It was true. Of all the lawyers who worked at the offices of Spenson and Shadir, she did seem to have the highest success rate when extracting information from even the most tight-lipped of their clients. But sometimes what they told her was nothing she wanted to hear, the stuff of nightmares, dark thoughts best kept secret. She sighed, resigned to the conspiring fates. I guess I can give it a go, but I can't guarantee success. Her fingers gripped the file. Isn't it all pretty cut and dried? He was found with the body, his prints on the murder weapon, no evidence of anyone else on the scene? Her words trailed off as Merrick's eyebrows lifted in surprise. He's our client, Irina, innocent and unproven. You know that. Read the file, talk to him, get a statement. Don't come back without one. Merrick pushed back his chair, indicating the meeting was over. Chewing her lip nervously, she gathered the file to her chest. Irina stood up slowly, 1,000 unasked questions swirling around her head. The words that fell from her lips next had been gathering like a storm inside her for years, and like a hurricane hitting landfall, they had to be unleashed. You know I've seen him before. She blurted out the words, her voice trailing to a whisper as Merrick's eyes focused on her again. I know you have, he said, appearing slightly bewildered by her outburst. We were all there at the fight last week when he won the World Heavyweight Championship. She nearly faltered under his scrutiny. No, she countered, urging him to understand. Before then. When? Merrick asked the question quietly, as if he sensed the underlying panic in her words. She knew then that he already knew the answer, but it was important to her that he understand fully what that meant. He was there that night. She watched him carefully as his brows rose sharply. I saw him with them. Merrick stared at her with concern. Are you sure? He asked gently. Irina swallowed before replying. I see his face in my dreams. Merrick frowned at this and looked grave. Irina, that night was a long time ago. You were just a child of 10, he said slowly. Belaw's face is well known. He's an athlete, and you've seen him many times in the papers and on TV. Dreams can be confusing. His face has probably merged into your memories of that night because you associate him with violence. After all, he is a fighter. Irina shook her head. I know he was there that night, Merrick. When I dream, his face is younger than it is now. Why would he look younger in my memories of that night if he weren't there? Merrick skirted the desk to take her hand. I have no answer to that. He paused, grey eyes darkening, heavy with sympathy, because he was more than just her boss, and one of only 2 people who knew the true extent of the trauma Irina had survived. You know, it still amazes me that you decided on this career path, considering all you've been through, that you still have compassion for the kind of people you have to deal with on a daily basis. His hands held her steady, feeling her reflexive shudder at the painful memory of all she had lost that terrible night 15 years ago. I'm so proud of you, Irina, your strength, and your innate sense of justice. You always strive for the best for your clients, regardless. Pulling her into a hug that managed to soothe some of her fears, Merrick rubbed her back gently. You've been working around the clock, dealing with the backlog of cases from the recent rioting, he said thoughtfully. After this case, perhaps you should take a break. You and Cassie can go and lie on a beach somewhere. Have fun. You ought to relax more. Irina clung to the tall, handsome man who had come to mean so much to her over the last few years. His aristocratic face, strong jaw, hair slightly greying at the temples, so familiar and warm. Family. Merrick was her family now, along with Cassie, his niece, her only constants in an unsteady world. Together they had nurtured and nourished her back to life, salve to the wounds that would never truly heal, replacements for those she had lost but not forgotten. They had taken her in at the lowest point in her life, Cassie becoming a sister to her and Merrick a father. There was nothing she wouldn't do for them. Swallowing the knot of fear that had tied up her throat since hearing that name, Irina gave Merrick a wry smile of resignation. I guess I'd better read the file. What time is the meeting set up for? Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Once Irina had closed the door, Merrick sat back in his chair and pressed speed dial. Irina seemed to have an interest in Tir Belor, an unusual interest, which meant that Merrick needed to take an interest in him. Since that day 14 years ago, when he had plucked a small frightened girl from an orphanage and taken her home to his niece, not one day had gone past where he did not take his position as Irina's protector extremely seriously. For Irina Columba was a very special individual, her safety of paramount importance, so important that if she were to be found by others who sought her, the consequences could be disastrous, not just for Irina or Earth, but for the whole of the known universe. I have a possible lead, he instructed his colleague on the other end of the line. Find out all you can about Tir Belor. Back in her office, Irina sat down at her desk, took a deep breath and opened the file. The pictures clipped to the inside cover slammed into her gut. Raw muscle, power, blood and rage. Snapshots of fights past, faces taut in fury, caught in that frozen moment as fist connects with jaw. Her fingers gathered one picture closer. She scanned the face that part of her recognized on an intrinsic level. So much so that it was threaded and woven into her soul, her past. She knew that face, knew she had seen it that night, that devastating night that had turned her life upside down. But more than that, it was a face that she carried with her, that some part of her held in connection to what she had lost. The tips of her fingers brushed across eyes frozen in a gaze that spoke of storm and battle. Tyr Balor. Her lips spoke his name silently as she studied the grim crime scene pictures of Seleos Black's corpse. The blood-stained floor and contorted body a reminder of the night her whole world collapsed. Images that contaminated her consciousness with memories she could never forget, no matter how hard she tried. Maybe there would be answers tomorrow, more than those needed for this case, answers to her questions. Crunching, bones cracking, booted feet, blood and death. The hiding place a toy box, eyes staring out through the hole her father had made because her sister insisted the toys would need some light. Light in darkness, a face scanning the room for hiding places. Balor, a shout, a name. Look for the girl. The boy's response, she's not in here. His face intent on the box, intent on her as if he could see through the wooden barrier into her soul. Black eyes, dark as night, fingers to his lips. Shh! A silent plea, a light switched off. Hey there, Rena! Cassie's voice cut through the dark of her thoughts, Irina's eyes blinking to awareness and sunshine, to Cassie's bright form standing at the door of her office. Cassie, her sister in all but blood. As usual, she looked stunning, dressed for business, her sharp dark red trouser suit and cream blouse enhancing the honey gold strands of hair that fell loose from the tight blonde she always wore for work. It was funny how they meshed so well together. Complete opposites in every way. Irina was the quiet petite brunette foil to Cassie's gregarious elegant blonde. They shouldn't have worked together, but they did. Cassie's generous nature breaking through Irina's protective shell of reserve at the age of 11, when Merrick had come to her rescue, propelling her from the darkness of the orphanage and back into the light. Daydreaming again? Cassie asked, her cobalt blue eyes twinkling with warmth. Irina's mood lightened at once. It always did when Cassie was near. More than that, Irina knew she would never have survived the darkness without her. Irina forced the shadows away with a mental shove. Guess what? She said lightly. I have a celebrity to visit. Ooh, interesting. Actor, musician, footballer, politician? No, boxer. Really? Cassie drawled, attention caught. Is it who I think? Well, do you know any other fighters recently in the news and arrested for murder? It's true. There has been a glut of murder, rioting and general all-round criminality recently, but only one boxer celebrity thrown into the clink. Cassie looked searchingly at Irina, hesitated a moment, and then teased, And you have pictures of him. Irina's jaw dropped. What? Cassie grinned and waggled her finger. I've seen your pictures of Tyr Muscles Balor. I just didn't like to mention it before. I always suspected you were more into brawn than brain. Cassie smirked, ducking her head quickly as a pink stress ball whizzed over her shoulder. Aren't you glad now that I dragged you to the fight last week? It might be the last time he gets into the ring, other than a prison one, of course. Irina frowned at Cassie. Is that why you made me go, because you'd seen my scrapbook? Cassie's eyes widened in shock. What? No? I was just joking about that. You mean you actually have a whole scrapbook? I only saw a couple of newspaper clippings you saved. Flushing scarlet, unnerved by the realization that Cassie had not known about her complete obsession with Tyr Muscles Balor, or her scrapbook of articles and pictures she had felt compelled to collect over the years, Irina fought to hide her embarrassment. Oh my God, you she spluttered, heat rising in her cheeks. Then why did you make me go to the fight when you know I hate violence so much? There was a serious expression in Cassie's eyes as she explained. It was just a corporate event, Irina, and Merrick was saying that you don't get out much and that you need to socialise, network a bit more. Plus, Luke was going, and I thought it would be good for you. I know Luke thinks you're cool, and I thought maybe in a different environment you might loosen up a bit. Irina was even more shocked. Are you seriously trying to fix me up with Luke? She said, shaking her head in utter bewilderment. We've been friends and flatmates since university. If Luke and I were going to hook up, I should think it would have happened before now. Cassie turned to her with an intense expression in her eyes. Sometimes, she said slowly, these things only happen when the time is right. Picking up the pink stress ball from the floor where it had landed, she threw it back at Irina. Maybe that time is now. And with that cryptic remark, Cassie left the room, leaving a shaky Irina to catch the ball. Her hands fumbled to catch it as Cassie disappeared, her legs so unsteady she had to sit down and take a deep breath. Irina could not remember feeling so off balance and out of kilter, not even after her family had died. What is going on with me? Her current state of mind could only be traced back to the day of the championship fight last week, and the strangely intense reaction she had experienced toward a man who was now a murder suspect, a man whose face was a constant shadow, haunting both her nightmares and dreams, a man who was a secret obsession she had hidden for years even from her closest friend, a man whose occupation was an anathema to her very soul, and a man who, with one look, had set off a chain reaction that reverberated in every cell of her body, inciting a maelstrom of confusion and chaos. She could not explain her extreme reaction or the strange fascination he held for her, and in truth, it was not something she had ever expected to have to address. But last week at the fight, her pulse quickened as she recalled the myriad emotions she had almost succeeded in packaging up and locking away in a to-be-forgotten box. Emotions her boss was unwittingly forcing her to tear open and confront. Emotions so bloody and raw they were terrifying. 8 days ago, when Cassie had reminded her that Merrick expected them both to attend an event that night, Irina had taken it to mean the usual boring meet-and-greet fancy cocktails with some major clients they needed to sweet-talk. Gritting her teeth because even though she loved her job as a lawyer, she really wasn't into the networking scene, Irina threw on her best strappy dress, a soft blue floaty number that fell discreetly mid-thigh, and hoped it was sophisticated enough but wouldn't draw unwanted attention. She paired it with her only Jimmy Choo shoes and flicked on some pink lippy and a dash of mascara on the way out. It wasn't until half an hour later, when she met up with Cassie, dressed much more casually in jeans and a blouse, that she realised where they were actually going. Irina gaped open-mouthed at Cassie as she registered where they were, and the crowd streaming into the arena. A boxing match? You might have told me. She managed to stammer, flapping her arms at herself to indicate how overdressed she felt. Cassie Shadir, her now ex-best friend, patted her arm as she would to calm an excitable child. It's fine, Rena, she said, dragging her onward with a Cheshire cat grin. We're in the VIP box, corporate lawyers, clients, arseholes in suits, you know, big heads with big wallets and small... Cassie! Irina cut her off. That's even worse. I don't want some leering, arrogant city type trying to bullshit me about how great he is. All that testosterone flying around, plus the fighting. 2 guys pummeling each other to pulp just isn't my idea of a fun night out. Then you can hide in the corner, drink champagne and talk to Luke. They were now at the VIP entrance, and as Cassie drew to a halt, a tall figure just in front of them turned with a wide smile, drawing Irina into a crushing hug. Hey Rena, Cass. He smiled warmly, embracing Cassie too and kissing her cheek. Thanks for wangling the extra ticket for me. Can you feel that atmosphere? I'm so looking forward to this. Cerulean blue eyes sparkled with excitement. Hi, Luke, sighed Irina, rolling her eyes at his enthusiasm, and resigned now to her fate. Hours of testosterone-fueled punches and bullshit. Guess I should have known you'd be into it. Luke was their flatmate. They had met him at university, Cassie and Irina both studying law and Luke majoring in architecture. The three of them had hit it off instantly, becoming a tight trio, their friendship a lifeline to Irina after the devastating loss of her family when she was a child. Luke was smiling broadly at them, his elation evident. A keen spectator of all types of gladiatorial conflict, he was a martial arts freak who trained 5 times a week in a variety of disciplines. His obsessive training meant that standing in front of them was a fine specimen of the male species, 6'2", athletic, honed muscle in all the right places, and as such he was the object of many admiring glances from the wannabe VIP girls hanging out around the roped-off entrance. Irina had no problem understanding why. His short-cropped blonde spiky hair was cut slightly longer at the front, so that a few strands fell across his eyes that were so blue they seemed almost unnatural, reminding Irina of tropical skies or the reflected blue of an island lagoon. The VIP groupies wanted to brush his hair away and drown in his eyes. Heck, sometimes even Irina wanted to do that, but only because the straggly bits irritated her. Luke was just a friend, a very good friend, but she had never thought of him in any other way, even now when he looked pretty hot in black jeans, a black button-down shirt and leather jacket. He waggled his eyebrows, making her laugh with his naughty boy grin, so she didn't resist when he hooked his arms for both of them to grab and ushered them towards the entrance. "Let's go, ladies, the fight of the century awaits. Ballor versus Taylor. It's going to be a classic." Once she finally grasped the reality of the situation and just who would be fighting, it was only her grip on Luke's arm that kept Irina standing. A churning sensation in the pit of her stomach sent waves of heat washing over her skin, every nerve ending taut with anticipation. She was going to see him, be close to him, Tir Ballor, her never-to-be-revealed most secret obsession. With every hot flush that crashed through her veins, the butterflies swarming in her chest danced a riot that set her heartbeat racing. Brain fogging, she fought for composure, the crimson warmth in her cheeks a sure giveaway. Thankfully, Cassie and Luke were too caught up in the excitement of the event to notice, and Irina managed to calm herself with the thought that in a stadium of over 30,000 people, how likely was it that he would be anything but a tiny, minuscule dot in the distance? So how she ended up, dizzy, disorientated, not 6 feet away from her fantasy obsession was a complete mystery. The corporate box had been exactly as Irina expected, full of deathly boring egos and bad shut-up lines, most of the guests more interested in the sound of their own voices than watching the early bouts. Irina had been grateful for the distraction and very happy to follow him when Luke suggested getting nearer to the action. Mainly to get away from the corporate suck-ups, she told herself, not to get closer to the fight and him. Needing little encouragement even from Cassie, who had practically insisted they go off together, Irina followed her flatmate, chewing her lip nervously. Luke, being Luke, pushed a way for them both through the rowdy spectators, the VIP passes provided by her boss working their magic. A sudden roar as the crowd bellowed loudly, and Irina's ears were assaulted by a frenzy of cheering, shouts and whistling as the 2 main protagonists emerged from the tunnel to her right. Both men were hooded, but Irina immediately felt the buzz of barely contained energy that emanated from the figure closest to her in red as he tracked a path to the ring. And then he was there, close enough to touch, a whisper away. His head swung to the left as he passed by, a freeze-frame moment, 2 dark eyes locking onto hers, dragging them both into a vortex, that dark, still space of existence. A gaping black hole opened up before her. Time and the whole of eternity stood still. The space around them dissolved, and Irina found her gaze snared by twin black holes that widened for a split second beneath slashing ebony brows. As they expanded, she experienced a wild rush of adrenaline, her body spiraling into freefall, the compulsion to simply lose herself in the darkness of his eyes, so overwhelming she was paralyzed by it. His head turned, jostled by the ocean of the crowd. The connection broke, and Irina was left shaking, deafened by the sudden barrage of sound and crushed by a devastating sense of loss. Trembling, Irina grabbed onto Luke, who steadied her with strong arms, but was too busy cheering to notice her reaction. The rest of the fight was a complete blur. Irina glimpsed snippets through a red haze of noise and motion. The fighters in the ring, the hustle of coaches and trainers, the referee trying to keep them apart before the bell sounded. The surge of battle, fists flying, a block, a jab, a flurry of uppercuts, bones cracking with the force of impact. Blood, guts, sweat, everything she hated, violence, rage, anger. The thump of bone onto canvas, and the racing of her heart pounding as an arm punched the air in victory. Her one overriding memory at the end of the night, the jubilant face of the man who haunted her dreams and nightmares, triumphant in all his blood-stained glory. A door slamming across the hall broke Irina away from her disordered thoughts. She needed to get it together. She was seriously cracking up, but why now? Considering the way her family had died, it was a miracle she was still sane. What she had experienced could have sent her down a very different path to see her shattered and in pieces. But though she still carried it with her, Irina had not succumbed to the constant pain of overwhelming grief. She had hung on, clinging to the thought that her parents and sister would want her to survive for them. For she had been given a chance to live when they had been given no chance. That her life had been spared by a pair of ebony eyes that drew her, against all reason, like a magnet, was a contradiction that could soon be answered. Tomorrow. Her bruised soul shook in anticipation.